The Australian Grand Prix is over, and Lando Norris in the Mclaren won the opening race of the year in the trickiest of conditions. But now F1 is moving on to its next race, which is in Shanghai for the Chinese Grand Prix, which means that once again it is time for my preview and predictions. This is a series where I will be previewing, and then at the end of the video giving out my early predictions for the Grand Prix. If you enjoyed the video, then please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now, let's get into the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the top teams later on, so please do stick around for that. Yep, next up it is the Chinese Grand Prix in Shanghai, which returned to F1 last season, and the Chinese Grand Prix will be the first sprint race weekend of the season, meaning that, as usual, the teams and drivers will only have one practice session to get the setup right for the car before the sprint portion of the weekend gets underway, with sprint qualifying on Friday afternoon, before of course the sprint race on Saturday morning. After the sprint race, the teams will be allowed to change the setup before Grand Prix qualifying gets underway, and then as usual of course the Grand Prix on Sunday. This means that the teams will have to quickly adapt and get the cars ready before sprint gets underway. On the bright side, if they do get the setup wrong, they can fix it before the Grand Prix portion of the weekend gets started. Personally, I think it is the sprint format that makes the most sense, but I still hate it. I don't think anyone could ever make me like sprint though. The Shanghai circuit in China is actually one that should make for an interesting sprint race and Grand Prix. Historically, the circuit can be pretty difficult on the tyres, meaning that for the sprint, if it is dry, tyre choice could be very critical, especially if they need to save an additional step for the Grand Prix. Not only that of course, but this weekend there has been a new technical directive regarding the mini DRS that some teams are potentially using, and now it looks like mini DRS has been banned for good. The circuit in Shanghai is pretty rough on tyres, as I said, and the reason for that is because the circuit features some long corners, such as turn 1, turn 7 and turn 8, and also the long turn 12 and turn 13 section before the very long straight. Along with this, there are several corners where rear traction is tested, such as the exit of turn 6 and turn 14. Overall, the amount of lateral load does stress the tyres out. In terms of downforce levels as well, the teams tend to run with a higher medium level of downforce so that they have enough grip through the corners, which again adds a lot of stress to the tyres. Because of this, Pirelli will be bringing a step harder tyre compound to this weekend compared to what we saw in Melbourne, meaning that the C2 is the hard tyre, the C3 is the medium tyre, and the C4 will be the soft compound of tyre. Last year there was a total of 41 pit stops, as it was a mixture of 1, 2 and even 3 stops, showing that in China the strategy can be all over the place. This year, I anticipate we will see a mixture of 2 and 3 pit stops, but the majority will be doing a 2-stop strategy. Overtaking in China is in general somewhat easy, and we do tend to see plenty of overtakes, especially compared to Australia, and you can see that as last year there was a total of 53 on-track overtakes. To help with overtaking, the Shanghai circuit features 2 DRS zones. One DRS zone down the long back straight, and the other DRS zone is down the pit straight heading into turn 1. The long back straight is in general the main area for overtaking. However, we can see some great overtakes heading into turn 6. Last year, the pole position lap time was set by Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, and Max set a lap time of a 1:33.660. During that lap, Verstappen reached a top speed of 336 km per hour down that very long back straight. In the Grand Prix itself, the fastest lap was set by Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, and he set a time of 1:37.810. This year, once again, I expect that the pole lap should be beaten quite easily, as should the fastest lap if we get a late race pit stop. I just want to say, if you are enjoying the video so far, then I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about Ferrari. For Ferrari then, it was a disastrous start to the 2025 season, and frankly, it was a ridiculous gamble in my opinion that didn't pay off. Despite the fact it was absolutely throwing it down on the pit straight right in front of the engineers, they chose to tell Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc to stay out on track, instead of coming in for intermediates, and this potentially cost them a top 5 finish in the race. For Charles Leclerc, the Australian Grand Prix started off pretty well, as he got past Tsunoda and Alex Albon relatively quickly. But after that, he was stuck, and he couldn't really do anything about George Russell in the Mercedes. Teammate Lewis Hamilton had a difficult race, and couldn't do anything about Alex Albon or Yuki Tsunoda in the intermediate phase of the race, as he was struggling to get on with his new race engineer, as they are still learning how to deal with each other. Australia was terrible, but China should be a better weekend with dry conditions expected. With a fully dry weekend ahead, they should be, in my opinion, back ahead of Mercedes, but it was a very rocky start to the year for the team, and they are currently 7th in the Constructors' Championship, behind Aston Martin, Sauber, and Williams. For Williams then, it was the dream start to the year, with a brilliant P5 finish for Alex Albon. Albon did a brilliant job to hold off Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari during the wet portion of the race, and then timed the call back to intermediates to perfection, and for a while, he had the Williams car as high as 4th place. Teammate Carlos Sainz didn't make it very far into the race, but overall, this was very positive for the team. In the midfield battle this season, Kick Sauber and Aston Martin are unlikely to be fighting Williams in fully dry conditions. Instead, it should be Alpine and Racing Bulls, but neither of those teams actually scored any points, which means Williams already has an important and healthy lead in the battle for 5th in the Constructors' Championship. For Red Bull, it was a very mixed bag. On the one hand, Max Verstappen finished in 2nd place, which was a great result, all things considered, but teammate Liam Lawson had the worst possible start to life in the Red Bull team. He was very slow and a long way off of his teammates, and then when taking a risk by staying out on dry tyres, he dropped the car at the same place as Isaac Hadjar, bringing out the safety car. In all honesty, Max finished higher than where he should have. The car was meant to be 3rd at best, as the Red Bull struggled with tyre wear compared to Mclaren, which was frankly in another league when it came to making those intermediate tyres last, and this looks to be an area where Red Bull must improve. Verstappen lost the tyres by the end of his qualifying lap, and in the race he couldn't stay with Lando over a stint. China is a different type of challenge, and it is a circuit that should suit their car nicely. I expect that we will see Verstappen contending for pole, but how will the brutal tyre wear help him in the race, or hinder him in the race, which is more likely what it will be? With that in mind, I think we should still see him struggle to win the Grand Prix, but the sprint win could be a possibility. For Mercedes, it was a great start to the season, and a perfect recovery drive by Kimi Antonelli, despite a spin early on in the race, as he finished a brilliant 4th place, which was earned with a brave overtake on Alex Albon in the dying stages of the Grand Prix. Meanwhile, teammate George Russell had a great drive, even if it was somewhat uneventful. Russell couldn't really do anything about the top 3 in the early stages of the race, and he managed to pull away from Leclerc early on, so he spent most of the race pretty much on his own. In China, it will be an interesting weekend ahead. The car should go well there, and they could be the 3rd fastest team once again, but I do think it will be very close with Ferrari. If they are not, then they will at least be the 4th fastest team and should bag some more very valuable points. Finally, for McLaren then, it was a very strong showing, even though at the end it was very close between Norris and Verstappen. The parts of the race where McLaren were able to just easily pull away showed the potential that the car has, and to be honest, that is what I am a little bit concerned with. It looked pretty easy for them for a while, before of course the safety car came out, and tyre wear looked very strong. Lando Norris led the whole race, and was rewarded with maximum points. Teammate Oscar Piastri should have had a solid 2nd place, until he went off circuit at the same time as Norris. The only difference, unfortunately for Piastri, was that he carried a little bit too much momentum coming back onto the track, and he lost control. After this, we got to see Piastri have a solid recovery drive to score some points. Going into China, I expect another very strong showing from McLaren, but I do expect there to be some competition from Max Verstappen and Red Bull. And also, of course, there is the new technical directive. I don't think the technical directive is going to hurt McLaren as much as some others predict, but I do think it could affect them more than it will anyone else. So with that in mind then, what are my early predictions for the Chinese Grand Prix? Well, I think that the top midfield team and midfield driver will be Carlos Sainz in the Williams, as I think it should be a very good track for their car. But what about pole position in the top 5? Well, for pole position, I'm actually going to take a bit of a gamble and go with Max Verstappen to take pole position. Let's be honest, it's probably between him and the two McLarens, and I want to go with Max just to spice it up a little bit. I could be an idiot, but I probably am. And what about my top 5 for the Grand Prix? Well, in P5, I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. P4 will be George Russell in the Mercedes. P3 will be Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. P2 will be Oscar Piastri. And I think Lando Norris is going to win the Chinese Grand Prix. But those are my thoughts. The question is, what do you guys think will happen? In the comment section down below, please let me know. And as always, comment, leave a like and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.